Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy at Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. Folks, I have a very special guest today. You're going to want to listen to this podcast. Are you concerned about climate change? Are you concerned about animals and their habitat? And how do you explain that to your children? Do your children ask you questions about it? Well, you're going to want to listen to my guest. My guest is Ronnie Swire Siegel, who wrote the book Displaced, a story about climate change and how displaced animals ring the alarm. Ronnie is an author, landscape architect, photographer, and environmental artist, very talented. And Ronnie spent some time in New Jersey. Yay! So I want to welcome Ronnie Swire Siegel. Am I saying Siegel? You're chatting with Betsy. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Your book, even though I didn't read, I read from the, getting an idea from Amazon, and from what you were telling me, sounds like a great book for children. So I'd like you to tell the audience of why you wrote the book, and what would you like the children and their parents or guardians or whoever reads it to them or reads it with them to get out of it?
Well, I have been an advocate for dealing with climate change for many, many years, and as a landscape architect, I feel very connected to nature and worried about the future, not only of nature but of humanity, and this is a very difficult problem to explain to children, and I felt that writing a book that deals with the emotional aspects of climate change would fill a gap that might help parents answer questions and help children understand what is going on around them even better. And it all kind of started during the beginning of the COVID-19 isolation, really. I had and being locked down at home made me go through past landscape photos that I had taken and looking at the world around us at the time when everything seemed so bizarre and surreal. We sort of got used to it, but the first feelings of seeing deserted streets and highways without cars on the road and supermarket shelves bare, it just was very bizarre, and my imagination began to kind of soar. And as I was looking at past landscape photos that I had taken from around the world, I started morphing them into surreal images of animals that were taken from one habitat and brought to another, and they look really uncomfortable in their new habitat. And in reality, there are so many animals at risk of losing their habitat, and what happens to them. So the book starts with a very scientific view of where certain animals live and what makes them at risk of being displaced. But then it veers into the imaginary world, the fantastical, where they get displaced and they try to find their way to a new habitat, and it gets there are 14 different animals, and each one has their own and so I get into their different stories, and in the end they're basically ringing the alarm and letting us know that something is happening on the earth that we need to do something about, and the positive resolution is that we all work together to solve climate change. So I have to say that, I wanted to end it on a hopeful, empowering note for children so that they feel that they, along with everyone else, can do something to make a difference. And
I wanted to mention, which I forgot, that this is your debut children's book. So yes. That's awesome. That's awesome. What age group would you say this book is geared to?
Well, I had help from friends who were child psychologists that reviewed it, and we kind of worked together and the age group, many different ages would get more out of different things out of it. So it could be as young as 5-year-olds up to, say, 12-year-olds, but probably the middle age range is the best. And it deals with explanations of the science, and especially in the back of the book, I have a couple of pages that is very helpful to parents and teachers and older children that enables a better explanation of questions that might arise from the book. It's also a helpful tool for as a teacher in, say, 3rd or 4th grade or even 5th grade to read before they get into studying environmental issues, because it challenges thought and brings up a lot of questions that could be followed up in classroom study. So one of the friends of mine who's a school teacher reviewed it and helped make it even better than it would have been, so that teachers could use it as a resource as well, and parents too. So, yeah.
That's going to actually recommend that teachers, people in the teaching education, should look into buying this book to use it as a learning tool. And then, I don't know if you ever thought about this. This is just off the top of my head. Going to schools in your area and showing them, giving them a copy of a book and saying, I think this would be great for your library, or going to your Board of Education where you live and saying, how about having this in your library? That's just me promoting
idea.
your book.
Thank you. I will definitely follow up with that, because I think the book isn't a science book, but it actually I hopefully creates an interest in science and an interest in understanding in more detail what's going on. But it also is kind of a a book that inspires action. At least, it was intended to be that way. And I believe that action to solve climate change it's a global problem, and it needs solutions that are enacted globally, and it needs solutions that are based in science. So we need to, encourage, promote the science for coming up with solutions, and for children to learn more about science and become part of the solutions when they grow up. And also, we need to work cooperatively and do, as a team in the whole world to solve this problem. And there are ways that we cope with severe problems in our lives, like COVID was an example. A lot of times we cope by denying the problem and having disbelief in the science, but we really need to learn from COVID and embrace the science and embrace forcing ourselves to be a part of a solution. But the solutions can be very exciting, and they don't have to be sacrifices. For example, if you use your imagination, if we relied on clean energy, our nature areas would not be at risk of pollution, and it would create a healthier natural world around us for us to enjoy. And transportation, for example, having electric or hydrogen cars or whatever emerges would be much quieter, so we wouldn't have the unpleasant noise of traffic, but also we wouldn't have the smelly, toxic air pollution that we have now. And travel may be more pleasant, relaxing endeavor with new inventions. So there are so many positive things to gain from tackling climate change. And I think we need to look at it in a positive way rather than, I have to give up this or that. And that
I think it will
work better. Yeah.
Yes, I think it will get the parents and the children, or I say parents, I should say, or guardians or whoever is reading with the children, that get them to think, get them thinking, their critical skills thinking. There is climate change, so what do we do about it? And how does it affect the animals? And because the children, of course, are our future, so they could get involved. I was reading probably back in March, I think before I talked to you the first time, I read at the polar bears, their ice is melting, and they're having a problem finding food. So they're traveling.
Right,
farther.
Right. I know, and that's actually in this book because they really need ice. I mean, their habitat is living on ice and eating, fish and seals that are also in that habitat. But when the ice melts, which is really happening very quickly, they're starting to migrate south. And I was at a conference with landscape architects, and I met a few of them from northern Canada, and they said that in their city, polar bears were actually coming into the city for the first time ever, and they were emaciated and, displaced. And so I looked up headlines of, in newspapers, and there are incidents of animals that are being displaced like that all over the place, but we don't put them all together to realize how many are being displaced and how many are getting into our radar. And it's just, it's a wake-up call, which is, the point of the book was, all these animals are making us realize that something is afoot and we've got to do something about it, not only to protect them, but to protect ourselves. And even in the book, I take an extreme example of the heat rising, because in Southern California, where I live, the temperatures have been going up. We've hit maximum temperatures in the LA area last summer in the shade of 115 degrees, but in Death Valley it got up to 130 degrees, and it's breaking records every year. So in one page of the book, this family decides to move to a cave because it's much cooler there. And it's just there are major examples of migration that's happening, and underlying reasons are climate change. Even the migration from Syria, it's a political issue, but possibly if you delve deeper, it could be climate related as well, because it's getting harder for them to grow food and to supply their needs, and that makes for civil unrest, and that makes for war, and these are things that we need to worry about too as another possible offset, a possible result of climate change. People in different parts of the world getting displaced for various reasons. So, but it's such a depressing issue. In a children's book, really tried to avoid making it depressing. And actually, I had written the book, and at the point where I was releasing it, I was interviewing a climate, a seismologist, Dr. Lucy Jones, who's also a disaster scientist, and she said that when people are sad about something, the research shows that they do less. They don't react, but when they're angry, they react. So I changed a word in my book from sad to angry, and it kind of, in a way, it empowered. It made a huge difference, and it empowered change.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think
that's very true.
So the book is, I'm angry about this, and does it have to be this way? And no, it doesn't have to be this way. We can do something about it, and, here's what we can do, and let's move on it. And I mean, look at, we've gone to the moon and back, and we've done great things as, team efforts, and I think we can, if we don't wait any longer, we can tackle change and in the end gain a better world for it. So so that's the book really is intended to not make you sad, but inspire action and anger, getting angry about the way it's going and giving you tools for how do you change it. And it is changeable.
Yes, I could speak for myself. I was, sad that my husband had early onset Alzheimer's, but I was also angry. I was angry how he was treated and myself. But being sad didn't get me into my car to do videos. Anger is what got me into my car to start raising awareness. So that's very true. Anger is okay, folks, as if you use it in a positive way. And you could take your anger, climate change, whatever your cause is, and turn it into a passion. And this is what people have to know. It doesn't matter what your passion is, your cause. Don't let your anger destroy you. Let it work for you and turn it into a positive energy.
I think that's so true. That's really well said because, I mean, you can take anger and do destructive things, but if you channel it the right way, you can solve the problem with it and you can make change for the better. And, you know, and it's all about using it the right way and you know, also facing a problem head on rather than denying it.
Yes, and I live in New Jersey, and we have bears in New Jersey. I never saw one and hope I don't, but they're coming into neighborhoods where you don't normally see a bear. And just a couple of weeks ago, I wish I had my car, I wish I had my phone with me. When I went to my car, I could have sworn I saw a coyote.
Oh,
I wish I would have taken a picture because it wasn't a fox. I know what a fox looks like. It didn't look like a regular dog that I'm familiar with. And I said to myself, what is that? And I looked it up, and it was a coyote. Now, I never saw one in my neighborhood. I live, you know, in a crowded suburban, you know, neighborhood, but I don't see too much wildlife where I live, maybe an occasional deer, but I never saw a coyote before, and that actually frightened me. I'm glad it was in my car. I wouldn't have gotten out, but it was just alarming to see that in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So they're looking for food.
Right. And you know, there's like an unsettling of, you know, the natural ecosystem, and we are, you know, as the population of humanity grows, we're constantly displacing the animals in the natural world as well, and we have to learn how to, you know, coexist and figure out ways of making that work as well. And there are a lot of, another thing in New Jersey, I was back visiting family, and many have photos of deer being born in their backyard, and this is so bizarre. You know, it's never happened when I grew up there many years ago. But, you know, the populations are changing of animals, and their habitat is getting developed, and that's another problem. It may not be, you know, a result of climate change necessarily, but yeah, there are many things happening in the natural world that are changing things from the way they used to be. And, you know, out west we have a big problem with wildfires, and you know, it's really disrupting life out here because the season for wildfires is getting longer, and the severity of them is getting greater, and we're beginning to pool the scientists are getting really in the weeds of studying solutions, and the power companies are getting involved in trying to solve problems where their equipment might cause fires. So everyone is working together, beginning to work much more together than ever before to figure out how to readjust, how to adapt to the drier conditions that we have. We have more drought out here. And how do we adapt to climate change? And also, in a bigger way, how do we mitigate it? How do we prevent it from getting worse and actually reverse it? You know, and that has to do with sequestering carbon. And there are, you know, when you think as an individual, well, what can I do about that? You feel kind of helpless. But in reality, we can do a lot. We choose to we can do a lot with deciding how we want to spend our money. Do we want to support, a company that is polluting or one that is cleaning the environment? Do we want to, support clean energy or transportation with how we spend our money, or how we invest in businesses that are either environmentally friendly or not? So we do have a lot of power, even though the problem just seems insurmountable. And I think if everybody is a part of the solution, it can really make a difference. Just like, if everybody wore masks at the beginning of COVID, there would be a lot less spread, if any, of the virus. And we would have possibly capped the problem before it got out of control. And that's my feeling, that we have a chance, is a very small window of a chance to do the same with climate change that we did with COVID. And certainly the vaccines made a huge difference in protecting people who are very vulnerable and in stopping the spread of the disease. So, science is also going to be an answer to climate change as well.
Yes, we need to learn how to protect, the animals. The wildfires are killing animals, killing the trees, where they live, causing, the produce, our vegetables, our fruit, prices of food are sky high because of what is going on in the world, and all the, fires and droughts and whatever else is going on. I want to thank you, Ronnie, for coming on and telling us about your book. Where can people purchase your book? I know it's on Amazon. Is it available anywhere else, or is it just Amazon?
Yeah. Well, it is on Amazon, but if you go to your local bookstore, they can order it too and get it anywhere at any bookstore. It's available. So you just have to bring in, the author's name and the title of it, and they can look it up, and then order it and get it for you. And so, I'm planning to release an ebook version, but because the photos are really such a key part of the book, I'm hoping that it's only used on iPads or, a good quality ways of viewing it, because the images are really important to the story. And but there will be an ebook version released soon as well.
And how can people get in touch with you if they would like to?
They can email me at books, BOOKS, at Swire Siegel, SWIRESIEGEL.com, or they could look at my website, which is SwireSiegel.com, SWIRESIEGEL.com, and there's a way to contact me on the book page.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you so much. Proud of you. You did very well. It's Ronnie's first interview, everybody, so she was a little nervous. I said, don't worry. People love talking to me.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure talking with you. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Here I'm chatting with Betsy. I just, I roll with the flow, folks. I'm just, Betsy from New Jersey. What can I tell you? I don't put on any airs. What you hear is who I really am. This is how I am. And I want to thank everyone for listening. If you missed any of this podcast, you can hear it on your favorite podcast outlet. I'm on Amazon.com. I am on iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, just to name a few. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who is station manager, Pastor World Talk Radio Network, who produces the show, writes the blog. Please read the blog for more information. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network, who gave me the press release to interview Ronnie, and for having a wonderful radio internet station where people get a chance to be heard. This is very important, folks. A lot of stations and a lot of people don't give people opportunities. Here at Passionate World Talk Radio Network, we want people to talk and tell their stories, and I can speak for myself, my own podcast. I welcome people, all walks of life, to tell their story. So I want to thank you all for listening. Please share this podcast to help other people. And in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, folks. Until we talk again, this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye, everybody.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.